If a hospital or a pharmacy recognizes that they have medication that will be expiring, they can go back to the manufacturer that they originally purchased it from and sell it back to them, but they only recover a fraction of the original cost that they paid, typically about half to 1% of that original cost. And what they receive in return for that is credit for future merchandise, so they can't get cash back for that. When it comes to disposing of prescription medications, we've got a serious threat to the environment because prescription medications contain man-made pollutants that wastewater treatment facilities were not originally designed or equipped to dispose of, and as a result, we've got surface water and groundwater that contains these pollutants and in turn is providing unhealthy levels to animals and to people, particularly fish. The counterfeit medication market also poses a serious issue. One of the main reasons is that the World Health Organization estimates that 16% of counterfeit drugs contain the wrong ingredients and 17% contain the wrong levels of the necessary ingredients. Over 30% of the counterfeit drugs don't contain any active ingredient whatsoever, so you've got people that are taking a medication, possibly for, say, a heart condition, and they think they're taking a medication, they're really taking a placebo, so their condition is not being treated. And this poses a serious health risk. I think it helps to give some context to understand the problem and the scale of the problem, to look at some numbers. So it's estimated that over $5 billion in medications goes to waste in the U.S. each year, and that's primarily due to expired medications. Over $30 billion of counterfeit medication is estimated to be sold in the U.S. each year. And the U.S. is not the only place that's having this problem. The international black market drug trade is estimated to exceed $200 billion annually, and it also accounts for 10% of the pharmaceuticals in the global supply chain. So the global supply chain, which the U.S. is inevitably affected by, is already seeing a 10% intrusion from the black market drug trade, which is absolutely going to introduce counterfeit medications. So the U.S. is not alone, which could also help to fight the problem because we could have the resources of other countries. As part of our research to see if RU medications would be a service that would be well received and really even feasible, we reached out to state and regional rural hospital executives to get their feedback on the idea, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Many of them saw RU medications as being able to serve an important need by reducing the environmental damage that's associated with disposing of expired medications. We'd also be able to provide consumers with a cheaper, safer alternative than seeking out medication through online pharmacies that often sell counterfeit medications. One cautionary tale that we received a few times was that a few executives, they had warned us about dealing with the Board of Pharmacy and that it can be challenging at times because of the regulations regarding the exchange of medications, which is understandable and sort of a known challenge going into it. And as the baby boomers move into their retirement years, which is historically a demographic that consumes the most prescription medications, the threats posed to the environment and the increased market for counterfeiters to prey upon will have to be addressed. So it seems like there's a good need and demand in the future for a service. Although we don't have any intelligence data on individual online pharmacy that sells prescription medications, the general industry analysis is that these online pharmacies sell prescription medication at a discount at about 80% or more. The catch being the origin of the drug and the composition of the drug. That's where the compromise comes in. The U.S. alone accounts for 70% of the online market, and it's getting disturbingly unsafe for citizens who need these prescriptions for chronic conditions. As part of our industry analysis, the price of pharmaceuticals is just continuing to skyrocket, and that's going to make those cheaper alternatives look better and better. So they could really make a much bigger impact. Probably part of the reason for those rising prices is, over 80% of the medications are distributed by these three wholesalers that are shown here, Amerisource, Cardinal, and McKesson. But fortunately, we've got a contact with McKesson who is actually really interested in our enterprise, and is working with us to come up with good solutions. Our enterprise is we had to focus our area. Pharmaceuticals is too big of a broad spectrum, so we focus on short-dated and top 10 drugs in the U.S. And it's competition already from the people already in the marketplace that we really identified. Our biggest barrier to entries. Another high barrier to entry is that everyone wants to sell preventative healthcare gadgets and dispensing drugs. So until now, the FDA has really only been able to warn people about the dangers of imported drugs and online pharmacies, but they haven't been able to really have a homegrown online pharmacy that they could point to and support, and we think we'll be able to step in and do that because we're going to verify that all drugs have been made in the USA. So we'll get their backing, we believe, just through our good business practices. And as part of marketing, we'll be maintaining a heavy online presence, because that's where we're going to be looking to drive our business to. So we expect that a lot of our customers would already be online. As we mentioned before, the sales strategy will be built on an online platform. So we're really going to market heavily online, and as part of our operation for growth, we're going to be looking to get involved with third-party logistics directly with pharmaceutical manufacturers. And when we did our sensitivity analysis, we identified that we could handle a decrease in sales of about 14% and still keep growing, so we saw that as a real positive indicator. Our revenue model will provide the details related to what I'm about to try and highlight for you, but I did want to try and highlight that we're able to generate multiple streams of revenue, and by treating each of the lines of drugs as its own independent profit and growth center, we can fold operations on a line of drug that's not performing well, which is a big benefit for us. You can see that from each cohort of states, we've got one drug that sort of stands out in year 3 as being a really well-performing drug. In the first cohort, it's Cymbalta. In the second cohort, it's Abilify, and then again, Abilify in our third cohort. And of course, for each of those cohorts, there's got to be a drug that's in last place. So if that were to continue to happen, we could just fold that operation and maybe try and find a new, more profitable drug. Although the majority of revenue for RU medications will be from the sale of drugs, we're also able to harness rebates from expired medications, as well as credit from the EPA and individual states for the safe disposal of expired medications. So the revenue tab of our financial model details out the phased rollout approach and all the financial details behind the phased rollout. I'll just quickly highlight here that in year 1, Cohort 1 enters the marketplace in 3 states, Kansas, Missouri, and Pennsylvania, and the projections for those 3 states can be found on the Cohort 1-3 States tab in our financial model. In year 2, the introduction of Cohort 2 will expand the reach of RU medications into 3 more states, Oklahoma, Colorado, and Nebraska, and those projections can also be found on the Cohort 2 tab. And then finally, in year 3, we launched Cohort 3, which introduces RU medications to 6 new additional states: Ohio, West Virginia, and Virginia, New York, Maryland, and Florida. Our dynamic sensitivity analysis table and tornado charts allow you to modify any one of 5 parameters: revenue, waste, purchase cost, variable cost, and fixed cost. And as you update those variables, the rankings and financial metrics are automatically updated as the value is changed. So when we ran our sensitivity analysis, the key finding coming out of that was that our fixed cost really has a lot of strength in its modeling. On our rankings, we could even change the scenario by 10% plus or minus, and it would still rank a solid number 4 out of 5 on our rankings. So that seemed very solid, very stable. The key finding coming from our tornado chart was that other than revenue, which does have both positive and negative wings, none of the other 4 variables come anywhere close to negative territory, even after adjusting for a 5% pessimistic change. So we were happy with that. I'd like to quickly highlight the return potential for RU medications. As you can see, in 2018, our first cohort launches, and we believe that at the end of 3 years, we've got the return potential for 49%. The following year, we launch our second cohort. Again, at the end of 3 years, that second cohort, we project, has an 18% return potential. And then the following year, we launch cohort 3, and we see a return potential of 29% there, which means that year after year, we're launching new cohorts, we've got new locations, and we foresee that within 3 years, they can all be profitable. We were able to see a good picture when we looked at the cash flow for RU medications, and that's why the saying "cash is king" looked like it applies here, because we should be flush with cash by our 3rd year. You'll notice we're only dependent on funding from outside investors for 1 year, and that's thanks to what we hope to be strong cash flows from our operations, to the point where you can see that the ending cash balance at the end of the 3rd year is more than triple what it was at the end of the 1st year. And that is an actual quote from an actual famous serial entrepreneur. Most of the people in the class should know him, and the picture that this painted prompted him to say that, so that was a positive. That gave us a boost. RU Medications was conceived on the idea of making a socially conscious enterprise that solves a complex problem for society while making millions in the process. With about $300,000 of outside investment and a lot of other financial commitments that'll work on notional arrangements of lines of credit, and you get you get paid when we get paid type of arrangements, we think our funding stream looks pretty strong, and we also have the opportunity to raise funds from family and friends, as well as traditional methods such as the Small Business Administration loans, major city incubators, and angel investors. RU Medications will be a partnership, and in addition to the partners, the staff will consist of a pharmacist and 3 pharmacy technicians at each facility. We feel that that would give us the expertise that we need while keeping the staffing model lean. For our facilities, we'd like to lease warehouse space, but we're going to be looking for the most lucrative incentives. So whichever one of the states can provide that for us, that will be our determining factor, our major determining factor. We're going to utilize robotic pharmaceutical dispensing machines. So this should help to cut down on the amount of staff that we need to employ. In order to transport drugs, both collecting and delivering to new customers, we will be utilizing 5 trucks that we will own. And if things get really good and we need them, we can always rent semi trucks.